lesson I'm about to talk about. And it should be noted that MBSR is taught by mental health professionals and not by Buddhist teachers. So, very, very quick overview of MBSR. Studies show that it can lower your blood pressure, reduce your insulin resistance, it decreases your depression, decreases your anxiety. It actually increases your killer cells in HIV. So that HIV versus AIDS, that distinction is based on the number of these cells, and it can actually go up to the point that your classification changes from AIDS to HIV positive. The number of antibodies that you develop after you get a flu shot is directly proportional to the amount of time you spend doing your MBSR practice. It reduces stress. Sleep is a more complicated topic. I have some data that it seems to improve sleep, especially in men. For some reason, in women, it seems to stay about the same. I have no idea why. Yeah?
So are these averages, or does this happen to everybody who does this program?
So these are just a quick overview of a lot of studies. So every single one of these is varied populations, varied distributions. It's almost never everybody. It's almost always some people do and some people don't. But you report it because it's better than something else. It lowers your cortisol, which is possibly the mechanism by which it increases immune functioning. So when you get really stressed out, your body's ready to fight or flight, and you don't need an immune system if you're about to run from a tiger. If you're running from your boss and you don't plan on leaving this job anytime soon, your cortisol level can get constantly elevated, and this actually decreases the effectiveness of your immune system. And this is a cool one. It improves psoriasis 4 times faster than treatment as usual. I like that. And there's a lot more, but based on this page. So 2 different groups of researchers said, wow, MBSR seems to solve everything, but we're always looking at specific groups. Depressed people, anxious people. They said, let's just look at everybody. If you have any problem, we don't care what it is, just come and we'll see if we can fix it. And in both of these studies, they just got a huge battery of questionnaires about everything about their life, and it turns out that, again, not literally everybody, but statistically and clinically significant majorities improved. It was maintained at a 1-year follow-up, and the first study only had 21 subjects. The second was 136, which is an awful lot of people to think that this is just some random fluke to happen to that many people. So this was morphed into a very similar protocol. This is the next acronym to know. MBCT is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. It's largely just a rebranding of MBSR, that you put cognitive therapy on the end, and now insurance companies will be more likely to pay you for it. There are some differences, but I'm not going to go into them right now. So this was first tested on people who are in depressive remission. So these are people who have been depressed and currently aren't depressed. And there was this really weird effect. On patients who had only had 1 to 2 episodes of depression, MBCT did nothing. On patients with 3 or more episodes, MBCT is the most effective therapy that's ever been studied. And this study was replicated. It was kind of hard to believe that it could be that effective, and they did it again. And it was as effective the second time. So the question is, why might this happen? What might be different about people who have 1 to 2 episodes versus people who have 3 episodes that would make such a huge difference in the way that meditation affects them? In the interest of time, I'll tell you the answer. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to guess. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, please.
I was just wondering if perhaps it would have something to do with 1 to 2 episodes of depression. It could be more of a situation type of depression, whereas 3 or more sounds like the person might have more of a chronic.
So this is exactly what the authors of the study thought. Although the way they conceptualized it was from a cognitive therapy frame point and less a biological one. So the way they would say it, instead of 3 or more, you're probably a depressive person, would be by the 3rd episode, what's making you depressed isn't something depressing in the world, it's the depressive thoughts. So if you've been depressed 2 times, you're very familiar with those thoughts. I'm bad at everything, nobody likes me. And so one day those thoughts start popping into your head. And and you go, oh my God, it's depression again, how long is this gonna last? And that just those thoughts, which could as easily be ignored, have now triggered this small reaction, triggering a larger one, and this might cause depression. So the authors actually investigated this, and it turned out that this was the difference, that if the trigger, the way they described it was, if the trigger was external, then this didn't work so well, right? If somebody you care about dies, meditating's not really gonna help. It doesn't make you a zombie, right? That you're gonna have these emotions. But if the trigger is internal, whether it's their conceptualization of this mental talk, or what I was taking as your conceptualization of biology, whatever it is, if it's the internal trigger, this seems to work. So I'm going to go through 2 more therapies on mindfulness and serious mental illness. The first is on therapy for borderline personality disorder. It's a complicated thing to explain. It's generally found in females. It's a fairly psychotic syndrome. There's frantic efforts to avoid abandonment, black and white thinking, so everyone is either the best or the worst person in the world. It's usually accompanied by bursts of anger and parasuicidal behavior. So more likely sort of cutting themselves, doing things like overdosing on pills that wouldn't necessarily complete the suicide, but this is a very chronic problem. And in therapy, these are the least popular patients. That if you do a survey of psychologists and say, who won't you treat? Borderlines are at the top. They tend to be, in addition to being explosive and dangerous, particularly to themselves, very manipulative, charming, and can suck people in. So this is really one of the hardest things to treat, one of the things we're worst at treating, and one of the things we least like to see. So dialectical behavior therapy is, I believe, the only empirically supported treatment that works for borderline personality disorder. So part of the issue is that DBT, that borderline patients don't comply with their treatments. And so DBT is actually it's a pretty complicated therapy, so I'm not going to go into exactly what it is. I just wanted you to recognize the acronym. It's not just meditation. Mindfulness is one of 4 components, and if I was going to try to distill the goal, it's trying to integrate the cold, reasonable mind with the hot, emotional mind, and wise mind is the term for when you're able to do that. So if you think of explosive anger, right? It's like you have this feeling of anger, and you can either act on it or not act on it. If you really zoomed in and all you're seeing in the world is this feeling of anger you're having, you're much more likely to explode. And so I think that this is the model for DBT, is using mindfulness to distance yourself. Things that change with DBT, parasuicidal behavior decreased. So that's these things that are sort of suicide attempts, but things that aren't likely to actually kill you. Hospital days decreased by 77%. Partial hospital days by 76%. Crisis center overnights by 56%. Contact with emergency services by 80%. Employment increased by 43%.
I'm sorry, what is the dialectical behavioral therapy? What exactly is it again?
So it's complicated, and for the interest of just doing an overview, I didn't actually tell you what it is.
Okay.
It's a therapy that involves 4 different components, one of which is mindfulness, and the other 3 largely derived from Zen philosophy. But as with most Zen philosophy, you can't do it at 5